My name's Guy Kesteven. Been testing bikes for over 21 years. And today, the bike I'm trying to keep up with these savages on is Polygon Xquare One. 180mm travel, front and rear, super radical, nailed react suspension system. Okay, first thing to say, paid content, but as you'll see, a totally honest, totally live ride review. My impressions of the bike as I'm riding it with these absolute maniacs. And it's taken me a long time to get used to this beast because it is very, very different. The grip through corners, considering this is the speed grip tyre, phenomenal. But once you get it bent over, it's going round. 66-degree head, 73.5 seat, 460mm reach on this large. So in terms of geometry, it's very much trail bike shape, but in terms of the other numbers, 14.7 kilo weight, 180mm travel, it's a full-on enduro bike. And that's how Polygon describe it. But interestingly, Marin, on their very similar Wolf Ridge, actually lists that as unclassified. And I reckon that's closer to the truth. But it's this nailed react suspension system that's the radical part of this bike. It's got two linkages on it that control the arc. The big part of it is a massive shaft that basically extends backwards and upwards as the bike compresses. And the chain growth, unlike most bikes, they start off with a bunch of growth if they want a positive pedaling feel, and then it slackens off. This is the same all the way through. So you take a big hit, properly pulls the pedals back round. You can really feel it through your legs. You go on a long, high hit descent, and it's like you've done box jumps all the way down it. Although it came with instructions to run it with minimal damping, and it's pretty much wide open in terms of compression spaces. What's really helped is actually adding a bunch of rebound and some tokens to stop it going so deep in the first place, and then stop it kicking back so fast. So the really extreme parts of the suspension are basically limited, and that's really made it a lot more controllable. No denying how efficient this bike feels. When you've got a steep, smooth pitch like this, the harder you pedal, the harder that suspension extends, the more positive it feels through your feet. There's still some movement if you look down. So obviously there are gaps in the power stroke when the suspension sags again. But in terms of direct pedaling, this is in a class of its own. The flip side of that kick down is that if it gets steep and slippery, it's easier to spin the back wheel because you are basically fighting against the suspension. It's only 180mm rotor on these guide brakes. Could really do with a 200 and codes. But they're definitely mid-length, rather than super long and stable, and you've just got to play this bike as it comes. It's a very, very distinctive ride. I'm still learning things about riding it hard. But at the end of the day, it's really enjoyable. And it's getting me down to properly rad descents pretty damn quick.
I mean, I know Strava ain't the most accurate of timekeeping devices, but that's not bad. When you saw how filthy it was out there and how slippery, can't deny. It's a crazy vehicle, but ain't slow. It just isn't. And I've had similar feedback from a whole load of other people who've like sample tested the bike, and like the guys at Yorkshire Cycle Hub, they were raving about it. They said they'd smashed a ton of PRs on it.
Straight away, it's obviously something of a freak. I mean, I don't just mean looking at it. Those looks are divisive enough, but just the setup. Polygon tell you to set it up with 15 to 20% sag and zero damping, rebound or compression on this Fox X2 shock that prides itself on having an absolute ton of damping possibilities. So it's weird right from the get-go. And even with 20% sag, it still blows through its travel really, really easily. The big advantage with this nailed suspension and all that pedal kickback is that it gets the power down like nothing else. Certainly like nothing else with 180mm travel. The harder you pedal, the harder that rear suspension feels. So climbing, kicking out corners, unbelievable. You can see why they haven't bothered to put a lockout lever on, because there's a little bit of bounce as your legs ebb and flow, but as soon as you stand up, it's just such a direct power delivery.
Is it good at climbing that one?
Yeah, it is, mate. And obviously, when you're riding a bike a lot, you get used to it. So I've had to keep coming onto other bikes just to keep my opinions kind of verified, keep a context check on things. And it's amazing how quickly you get used to all that kickback, and suddenly the reverse seems weird. So having a bike that, you know, kind of bounces in the opposite direction, doesn't stand up, feels a bit soggy under pedaling because the anti-squat feels a bit weird. And yes, it does give your quads a pummeling more than any other bike I've ridden. But then when you look behind you and see the gaps it's created, you realise you've been going pretty bloody quick to earn that punishment. And it's probably hurting them more. And that's another thing you have to get used to. While it's really sharp, involving and communicative through the pedals, when you're just relaxing into all that huge amount of travel, that super linear sort of flaccid feel, you're basically totally isolated from the trail. So although it's easy just to kind of smother your way through stuff, it kind of lacks that edge you need to really drive hard, to really feel totally involved in a sort of race tune way. And the other thing you notice is that there's a fair amount of twist through the back end under power, and the front end isn't the stiffest in the world either. But because there's so much travel hiding it all, and you concentrate so much on the suspension action, it's never really a big issue. And it all adds up to more compliance in 3D and more ground hugging traction, as long as you stay sat down and spinning rather than yanking on the pedals. It's like a plush bike with the tyres at 10 psi. The way it just breezes through stuff that would normally scutter you all over the place. And that's when it feels like a really smooth, enjoyable trail bike. Then you remember it's 14.7 kilos. That's a lot of weight to be carrying around on a trail bike, certainly a very expensive one. I mean, there are so many reasons I shouldn't like this Polygon. High bottom bracket, but it isn't a high bottom bracket when you squash it through turns. And it means you can run a 175mm crank for proper leverage. You don't have to run a 170. And rolling through stuff, as long as you relax through your legs, that pedal growth really smooths out those square edges. I'm sure it would be faster downhill if it was longer and slacker, but then it wouldn't twitch its way around uphill hairpins as easily. It could be a lot stiffer, but then it shrugs off together with that 180mm travel. It flows over stuff really, really easily. It could have less pedal kickback, but then it wouldn't drive as hard. I mean, this is a genuinely extreme bike, and there's so much weirdness going on. The way it looks, the setup, because it's so different, whether you're stood or whether you're sat, because you are basically its own compression damper. And also, as I guess, there's a professional habit of overthinking everything. So because it is different, you just end up spending more time trying to work out what the difference is doing. I had a massive nightmare with the nailed rear axle tonight. That's something you make sure you know how it works before you accidentally loosen it in the middle of the night. So if you just relax and just let it flow, just the grip is outrageous. Whoa, hello. There's not much in the way of sharp feedback. The steering's not that sharp, and the suspension feel certainly isn't sharp. It's not a bike that you really attack the trail on. It's more about you ignore the trail on. And while it's not the steepest head angle in the world, you can see it hooks a bucket turn nicely. Every time I've ridden it, it's just surprised me with how well it's done and how well it's let me do. I mean, they've got the conventional Siskew. If you want a more normal bike with less, setup complexities and peculiarities. I've been test riding this Polygon now for 2 months, and I've got to get to some kind of conclusion. So what do we definitely know about it? It's totally unconventional. Pedals and handles completely like any other 180mm bike I've ridden. Super fluid and flaccid with that super linear shock rate, even with compression spaces in it. There's a huge amount of pedal kickback, which some people will hate. And some people, a lot of people, just hate it on principle, just because the way it looks. And because it is an oddity. The frame's flexy, and even though the angles aren't that conservative, it does feel higher and shorter than it actually is. And there's no getting away from the fact it is really expensive. And it does take a whole new approach to set up. That minimal sag, minimal damping, it does take some getting your head around. And it would be really easy to review this bike if it was slow and shite. But the truth is, at the end of the day, I'll go really quick on it every time I ride it. Not just on Strava, but against people I ride with all the time. It puts them in the hurt locker on climbs and it drops them on descent. And I guess that's the conclusion, really. This is something very different and something very quick. Polygon, well done for literally going out on a limb with an absolutely freaky machine. But if you want something different and you don't mind answering a ton of questions to yourself when you're riding it or to everyone you meet in the car park, then you've got to give it a go. Anyway, thanks for watching. There's an absolute ton of background riding. Like I say, I've been on this for 2 months. A ton of background videos on Patreon. If you want to get involved in there for a subscription, that'd be awesome. But thanks for your time, and make sure you watch the technical watch through. because there's a lot of tech details in that, including the joys of the nailed axle, why it should have a slightly set back seat post, how I've been working with the shock setup, how this whole nail suspension system works, and a bunch of other stuff. But yeah, thanks for learning on the bike, Polygon. It's been bloody interesting.